Okay, so I'd like to begin our session with honoring the Triple Jewel. I'm just going to put the charting booklet in the chat for those that need easy access. So beginning on page 3 at the top, the honoring of the Buddha and the Sangha, these ancient ways of bringing to heart, to mind, the refuges, the paying respect in alliance with our teacher, the Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, the Dharma that he transmitted that has been carried over time and space through many different cultures, originating obviously and supported and grown through Asia from the Gangic plain of India. And this Sangha, this gathering together for the sake of practicing this Dharma. And even if we're not in, or even if we are in the front of a Buddha, we still really need to awaken the internal Buddha, or apply the Buddha, the knowing, aware, present heart, reflecting on the Dharma, reflecting on all conditions, whether we like them or not so much through preference, through resistance to what's difficult, but through understanding that whatever is arising, we can contemplate and becomes a portal for us to deepen our wise reflection, our wisdom, our discernment, kindness, the Brahma Viharas, compassion, and so on. And the essence of our ability to do this is supported by each other and by the lineage of Sangha, but also ultimately Sangha is about this practice, applying the medicine of the practice. So I'm glad we can do this together today. It feels really important to I'm just going to, sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to make, and I'm going to make you co-host so you can just help, if you wouldn't mind, to let folks in, might not see or be able to do that. So yeah, so the top of page 3, honoring the Buddha, and then on page 4, the recollection of the Triple Jewel, these refuges. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti pisso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vichajarana sambano sugado lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati sata devamanu sanam buddho bhagava Tisawakado Bhagavata Dhammo Sandidiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Banaiko Pajadan Vedita Bhovinyu Iti Subhati Bano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujupatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya Padipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samije Padipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yatitang Jatare Purisayakaniya Tapurisa Bhogala He Sambhagavato Savaka Sangho Hahunayo Pahunayo Dakinayo Anjali Karaniyo Anutara Punyaketa Lokasati. Then on the previous page again, the mantras on page 3. These are each protections. This chant we just did, the honoring of the Triple Jewel, the honoring of the Buddha, are also very ancient protection chants that we can bring to mind. These short mantric forms are easier to remember. So let's do the first one. It's actually a very lovely one from the Tibetan tradition. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Munaye Soha, honoring the Tathagata, this inwardly dwelling presence, stillness within movement, timelessness within time, deathlessness within the arising and passing of all things. Tathagata is what the Buddha most referred to himself as, the Tathagata. Tata, such, dwelling in suchness, in presence in your original nature. Gata has this sense of flowing, coming and going, stillness within movement, movement within stillness. So as we do this mantric form, you're aligning with this meaning, with this sense, which is basically awakening into your original nature. Muni Muni Maha Munaye Soha Tayata Muni Muni Maha Munaye Soha Dayata Muni Muni Maha Munaye Soha Dayata Muni Muni Maha Munaye Soha. So this is a beautiful sounding of this holy ancient honoring from which to establish our meditation posture, which is taking a comfortable, sustainable position with your body. You can feel, sense the lengthening of the spine, and at the same time, on an out breath, just letting the face and the shoulders soften down through the torso, softening the belly, and arriving more fully into our seat, into our being, into our posture, into the ground, into the earth supporting us. And then the seat of the mind, this natural state of being before we know and think about everything and figure it all out, just this turning up, this present, open, aware, and supportive, just allowing our attention to follow the pathway of the breath. You can either slow down a few breaths to help that steadying of the mind on the slower rhythm of the body. Or you might just track this feeling of rising and falling of breath at some point within your felt sense body, as sensation, as feeling tone, somewhere a bit more neutral than place in our body where we might feel activated or turbulence. And so let's just take some time together to just be with how we are, to receive what's present for us, to be content with one breath at a time, to slow down for that breath, for the slow rhythm of the body, steadying, inwardly listening, being present to how it is, sound, feeling, tone, sensation. On the inhalation, suffusing the body with chi, with this breath energy, vitality. On the out breath, calming, soothing, mental, bodily, heart formations. To whatever extent is possible right now. Gently, spaciously, patiently. So I'm just going to remove the spotlight so I'm not just looking at myself. I can see you as well. So yeah, you can go to gallery view or speaker as you wish. So dear friends, I feel like that meditation, even though it was short, really helped. To just, doesn't take long sometimes to just take a moment to just feel what's happening internally for you. So much of our attention is drawn out externally. What are the impacts, particularly that we're with, which I'd like to reflect on a little. There's certainly not enough time to go into this very big territory. We're in a very big territory. But to just try and touch on some points at this moment and, draw on this great resource that we have of the Dharma and the Sangha, actually. And then this internal Buddha, this jewel in the heart of the lotus, is not out. It is out. It's in every moment, every circumstance, internally, externally, the potential for us to recognize the already illuminated nature of reality itself, undifferentiated, within which all is present, the whole gamut that we're in, within a timeless, deathless sphere. So the Dharma leads us both to contemplate the conditions of the world, and to right action as one of the factors of the Eightfold Path to respond according to our ability and skill and so on, for the sake of alleviating suffering. But it also trains us to turn the mind back to its own nature. This is the deep Guan Yin meditation. Guan Yin is the merciful one who responds, shapeshifts, turns up and responds at ease, in this easeful, timeless presence of the heart, to respond and bring compassion, merciful transformation, soothing the ills of the hearts of living beings, uplifting, awakening. So this is, however we understand Guan Yin historically, and as an image and archetype and sense, as a being, an ancient one. Guan Yin is ultimately this very nature, right in the core of our own being, listening and present to it all. So being present to it all is certainly not easy right now, and it's not going to get very much easier as we are on a path, a collective path that's going to be profoundly already challenging, in even more so, mostly because in many ways we haven't really prepared to work towards, for all sorts of various reasons, in the power dynamics of what controls not only our worldly winds but also the consciousness of humanity as well. It sort of oppresses, and from the hindrances to social and global influences and impacts that oppress this ability to have galvanized and prepared more for the times that we're now moving into. So what I'm saying is that instead there's a lot of emergency response rather than considered ways that we can engage. And when we're in an emergency response, we're in a least optimum state, really, to respond wisely or carefully. We're responding often from trauma patterns or from our own undigested early wounding, or from just panic and fear, or views, the mind that's increasingly conditioned into separative, divisive consciousness, here in this country, US, and everywhere around the world on the whole. Not many cultures can hold together under such forces. So this is where the Dharma becomes even more important. This training of the mind, this healing of the heart, transforming the heart, the shadows, and to hold a light of what uplifts us. So, we can see already with the fires in LA, which has gone around the globe. It's not the only fire, it's not the only flood, but what happened here gets amplified. And it's really caught. I've been getting lots of messages from family in Ireland and UK. Are you okay? I'm like, well, I'm actually miles away, but I know what it's like. We had a fire in our small hermitage we built in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa that nearly took out our local town, and had to run for it, like people are running for it, and it gets very panicky, very confusing. Sometimes you can't even see well because of the smoke. So I know that feeling. We've been evacuated a few times here in Northern California. We've been very aware, living quite near to Paradise. Well, not that near, about 3 hours, but feels quite geographically near enough to experience all the smoke and the ash of everything burning. So, this with the floods, earthquakes, these disasters have all come really, there are that which nature unfolds, but much of this has come from this human mind itself, from us not attending carefully, and not living within our limitations in an earth system, an earth-based body, with confusing the unlimited with the materialistic realm, wanting to make that unlimited rather than understanding the citta, the heart, is already unlimited. So this confusion of placing pressure on the conditions to give us what it can't give us, this world. However much we tweak those conditions, which we're masterful at in this particular civilization point we've gotten to, but we haven't, none of that's been really guided by deep wisdom, or maybe really profound, unshakable compassion. So these are the territories that the Buddha trained us in, is to develop and deepen our wise, these two great wings, wise, compassionate heart, as we live in a more hotter, fractious, unsafe, divided a world where, it's a time of live-screen genocide over the last year, of ecocide, the crashing of earth systems, extinctions. This is, I think, so I want to just bring up as a starting point, really, this enormity of what we're meeting, and whether it's enormous, like the whole world system that we've known in a state of freefall increasingly, or whether it's just what's happening in our personal life, which is enough already. If it wasn't for living in an apocalyptic time, it's already enough just dealing with not even the relational field, but with ourselves. So, but it's all interrelated, of course. But this first area of our training is to meet dukkha. Is in the Four Truths. This is one of the most really important teachings to have some mastery in. This ability, however much we naturally, and there's very good reasons to defend and deflect and project this experience of dukkha, finding something to blame that isn't the real cause, which powers of be have gotten very, very skilled at manipulating, taking our attention, and we too, our own selves. So this being willing, this training that we do in small ways, allows us to stay steady and go, whatever it is, it's really, we're just training to be with just this much. There's the massive all of it, and that's immediately going to overwhelm us. And it's not that we shouldn't stay uninformed, we should be informed to be smart, street smart. But we're only really with this here, this being, this much, the impact and responding from there. So to know this is dukkha, this is painful, this is unsatisfactory, this is stressful, this is overwhelming, this is, many people, myself including, the impacts of not only things like these natural disasters that aren't, well, you say natural to where the mind moves to greed, hatred and delusion. It seems not really our natural state, but whether that or, we just also here in the US, we're in a process of shifting, and globally actually more and more the pressure is to shift from however frayed, and perhaps we never really even reached the ideal of a democracy in many places. But still it was an important ideal and one that worked probably until now, until it got hijacked completely, somewhat representationally, but moving from that to a corrupt oligarchy, basically, in this sort of race to the bottom, with enormous powers on all fronts. So it's daunting. And there are impacts that we are already feeling and will feel by these shifts, profound shifts in the worlds that we've known for many of us, not all. Many have lived, many more than us have lived in our more comfortable, entitlements that we have been often connected with oppressions of peoples that have to endure, social breakdown, economic breakdown, political breakdown, sometimes over long periods of time, genocides and so on. So it's not really new territory, but the stakes are the highest they've ever been, of course. So, and it's global and a fire hose of information. So to stay somewhat informed without overwhelming our systems. Thanissara and I just spent a week doing a retreat. We went to practice with the Chan monks of Chinese lineage in Redwood Vihara, which is South Bay, looking at a text from the 1500s of a Zen master. It was extremely helpful just to put a period of time, come offline and just practice this cultivation of what strengthens our ability to meet dukkha, this working with building this capacity to stay steady, which we do by practicing just the simple development of of samadhi, the gathering of mind, the focusing on something simple like breath, more neutral sensation, until we can turn that gatheredness, that strength of mind, to meet the uncertain, the painful, and certainly anicca, dukkha, anatta, this ephemeral transiency laced with the experience of dukkha is certainly what we're meeting a lot. So this ability to turn the mind, to meet the difficult, and for the sake, with a steady mind, to contemplate its nature, to reflect in the Guanyin listening, which understands that there's no ultimate separation in reality. There's no ultimate in there and out there. Then that contemplation can be steadied by Guanyin is the one that contemplates at ease, but also with compassion, which means to be willing to feel, not only just think about or observe it at a distance, like we disassociate and somehow maybe it's non-attached, but maybe it's but the willingness, compassion is rooted in this willingness to feel, and it doesn't feel good. So to have some ability to know, these are vast territories, each and of themselves, to know how to stay steady in the second foundation of mindfulness, which is how I find one of the most, in many different ways, of course, to bring attention to unpleasant feeling. It can be certainly feeling a lot of grief, a lot of numbness, definitely heightened anxiety, this sort of sense of dread. and despair, a bit stunned. It's sort of a mixture of different feelings that come through when we open up into we're porous beings, so even if we feel fine, we're still gonna, if we haven't really become completely armored, which is what we're trained to be, we feel it, we feel this, and we need to feel. We need to feel with, but we get lost or overwhelmed. Ajahn Chah talked about having mindfulness like a net, that you capture the feeling and the feeling tone, the mind state, the thought form, to capture, to contemplate, to discern, to explore. What is this? Where is it arising from? It's not always all ours. It's hard to discern, but it is what it is before we react. So this pausing is a skill of the Dharma. How is it? Pausing, it's dukkha. Is in this, it feels like this. It feels, and just to even in the vipassana, the feeling, it feels unpleasant, it feels hot, it feels heavy, it feels, I don't know what to say, it hasn't got a word, but I'm aware it's subliminally destabilized. We can kind of start to, and then start to breathe there, bring space, bring the listening, aware, present heart. We're bringing this Kuan Yin power, which has a vow power of compassion, this bodhicitta power. We bring that to bear upon this intersection of where consciousness, pure consciousness, touches form, whether it's subtle form like feeling tone, vibrationally or frequency, or coarser, denser. And there, the nature of awareness itself, it's the awareness, it's the awakening, the presence that actually transforms. It's not the I, it's not the me trying to do it. It's just being, I'm breathing with how it is. Locating, usually felt senses in the middle of the body, down into the gut, and breathing, paying attention here. And then this awakens the Dharma, the living Dharma, as Ajahn Chah, to discern. So to be able to discern in this time is going to be very important. It always has been. Is this true? Is this false? How does it feel? What does my gut say? What do I need to understand more about this territory to get to distill not necessarily a hard and fast opinion, but a sense of true and false and right response. And sometimes that takes, in this world of people being siloed and stuck into the stream of social media, it's even more important with so much manipulation going on for nefarious ends, really, not for the welfare. And all of this takes, so to meet dukkha, to have conscious working with feelings, shadow, to avoid, and I noticed the other day when I just paused, sorry, I'm not going to have time to go through this whole thing here, so I'm going to have to distill, but I noticed, this is a very important piece actually, that I noticed that when I just, because, we tend to power on and override what we feel, and at these times when there's so much coming in, there's so much that we have to digest and orientate and energize positively around, it's hard to do that if we don't allow the time to clear, or at least recognize the heaviness, the sort of the numbness, the shut downness, the disassociation, how that's felt. And so what I noticed when I was doing that, I kind of regularly trained the mind to go there, the attention. But I noticed actually there's an extra tiredness. It's already tiredness because of the psychic weightiness, really, of what's being downloaded at this time. So to be kind to ourselves, we might need to pace ourselves differently. We might need to take more space to do this kind of, inner process, inner reorientation. We should really, I'm trying to do this to what sustains, what brings health, what brings well-being. For this long haul, it's a long haul. So this renunciation to simplify, What don't you need? What, physically the stuff and inwardly the stuff. I think this will be like a more warrior type training to simplify, to align our energy. So it's so easy to get scattered, to keep that sense of to take something out of your life that you don't need, that's just seeping away your energy. And endure the sense of that feeling, this is very much in a monastic style. As Ajahn Chah would say, a lot of thing comes down to just enduring and not reacting. And then finding that begins to build this spiritual strength, this chi that we will need to sustain ourselves. This bodhicitta, this vow. And this is really this devotion. It's, the Buddha said, to live in this world happily, we need something to serve. We need something higher than us. It's just serving sometimes I think a lot of our well-being practices, very, very important, but it can have this edge of tipping into a little bit like our cultures become narcissistic, like very self-individuatedly orientated. And ultimately that's good, that's beneficial, but it doesn't necessarily integrate us in a way where we're being fed and within a collective. So when the Buddha contemplated this, he realized he himself needed something to serve. It's one of his early contemplations. A person without something to serve lives unhappily. So his service was to the Dharma. So, there's a certain way we could say it's all part of the Dharma. We're serving it all. We're serving the collective. We're serving liberation for all, not just humans, for the earth, for the plants, for the trees, for the creatures, for the animals, for the, all forms of life. We're part of a cosmology of interbeingness. So this is the vow of the bodhicitta, and it's this, which can be formulated. You could take your own time to make your own vows, your own intentions, own guidelines, be revisited again and again. So in this sense of devotion and trust and faith. So Ajahn Chah, he encouraged what he called the wisdom of right view. It's not just about getting calm. He said that's the piece of one kind of practice, just getting calm, but the peace of wisdom is much deeper, meaning the peace you can be with the uncomfortable, with the difficult, and still know peace. It doesn't have to erode. Whatever it is, it's the same principle. A world end, this is sort of a world ending time, a world we've known, or whether it's just, I scratched my car, which I actually dented it by missing this thing sticking out of a gate the other day. So it's like, that's not a big deal in the realm of what's happening in LA. It's a tiny thing. Sahara was an ancient teacher of Nagarjuna. Not only do we become skilled at turning to dukkha, but we start to transform it proactively into its opposite. So this is the spiritual kung fu, if you like, but spiritual power, not just staying stuck there. He said, just as the ocean's salty water taken into the clouds turns sweet, the stable mind works to benefit others, turning poison into healing nectar. So this calling on this devotion, we do this in the sacred, what's called sacred mountain Sangha, aligning with the deep sacredness at the essence of all. Everything has been distorted, from the sacred into this hungry ghost realm of consuming the loss of the sacred, the loss of the wholeness. How much can we consume to fill this hole, never as consumed, with filling it with the wrong things. So there's sacred devotion. The devotion that can sustain our practice through all circumstances. So Ajahn Chah said, when you cultivate both of these, the peace of samadhi and the peace of wisdom, then the mind becomes very powerful, quoting him, and no longer tries to run away. With such energy you can become fearless. In the past you were scared to experience everything, but now you know mind objects as they are and are no longer afraid. You know your strength of mind are unafraid. You might feel fear, but you're not. We will feel fear. We feel fear. There's a fire coming towards you, natural. Fear, run. But there's some presence of mind that can sustain, which we will need to respond the most skillfully, the most clearly when we're, to secure this abiding within the citta. So mind, you see mind objects as Ajahn Chah, but they do not maintain a hold of the mind. You leave them where they are and stay secure in your place of abiding within this citta, this unshakable heart. This is peace at the highest level, the peace of wisdom. So what should you do when you're calm? Turn towards this practice, contemplate the states. Eventually you come out the trench. You can't stay sleeping in there forever, and when it's time to fight. This is the way of practice. You can't allow your mind just to hide, cringing in the shadows. So we can't, I know there's a big part of me that would like to just cringe, not so much in the shadow, but perhaps under a duvet, and stay there. But and for that, this last territory, the last few minutes, is there's no doubt that we are not going to be able to meet these conditions that we're now, this new world that we're hurtling into at such great speed, which is all the more important to steady and slow and pace ourselves so we don't get in the riptide of that. To actually understand that this is community, to building community, to perhaps re-envisioning what we've understood Sangha to be. Reverend Muthna Isaac, who's an evangelical Lutheran pastor or reverend priest in the Church of Bethlehem in Palestine, gave a talk the other day, and he talks about spirituality or religion occupying three territories. One that he called like a state theology, where it's hijacked by state power and aligned and purposed for the manipulation for people really to reinforce the ends of power players, whether in the political realm or other realms. So we've seen that historically. We certainly see that now in many places. Or what then he calls church theology, which prioritizes peace and reconciliation, but at the expense of justice, which is sort of like promoting prayers for peace, acts of charity, but doesn't really challenge the status quo. And a lot of what we do in our practice spheres probably falls in spiritually, new agey, in this kind of territory, which is really, really good and perhaps has been more appropriate, not necessarily really deeply, but in less turbulent times. But then he talks about prophetic theology, which is where one learns to courageously speak truth to power, to demand justice and stand in solidarity with the oppressed. So I would say that to meet this time, to really build community even beyond our own silos, which have been separated out into divided spaces, makes it all the easier to be manipulated from within and used for nefarious purposes, that it will take us some real exploration, study, inquiry, collective discussion, co-creativity, to explore what does it mean to re-envision Sangha, where we start to apply the internal technology, if you like, of liberation, like the Paticca Samuppada, the wheel of dependent origination, the Thanissara, how that is unlocked. The Buddha's third knowledge of his enlightenment. which is what this practice is about: samatha, samadhi, vipassana, chan, zen, all of it, compassion, unlocking those keys. How do we apply that kind of technology to unlocking the systems of oppression, the systems that keep people divided, that loss of compassion, that loss of moral compass, that loss of humane values and protections for, of workers, of animals, of earth, of the environmental systems, the living systems, of civil rights, human rights, racial rights, all of the hard-won rights of the last century, really, and the early this century, all on the line. So it's daunting as a sort of collapse of many myths, if you like, as Edward Endinger says, a very dangerous moment in a civilization when there's things we thought were in place and they start to erode, especially so fast, humane values and the upholding of certain understanding of what keeps a society afloat. But of course, we know now there's a lot of hidden shadow that kept here the US as an imperialistic power afloat, that weren't unpackaged deeply and which now are being, need to be, have been by less entitled community or more marginal communities through the politics of social hierarchies. So that's a big territory, of course, but this, what does it mean inwardly and outwardly to foster? Like when we were in South Africa, for 30 years we worked there, not all year, staying a whole year, but we arrived just as apartheid fell into what was effectively a low-grade war zone. A lot of violence, a lot of euphoria for the end of apartheid, but it was quite scary too. I found it scary anyway. A lot of people had guns, getting guns. There was a lot of people reporting, coming into retreats that we were hosting, reporting all sorts of violence, experiences, fear, higher and higher walls, more and more security. That kind of mentality was also quite strong. And so I could feel the fear. It can be very paralyzing, very profound fear when it hits a survival sense. It evokes a lot. And there was a point when I had to really not to be paralyzed by that, to make a very conscious decision, which was a decision really that I could possibly meet a violent death, unexpected violent death. And somehow when I confronted that and then really brought it in to my consciousness, it really soothed the fear. It's not that I never felt fear, but it sort of brought courage. It brought this sort of sense of focus and sense of trust. It's like I have to trust something else. I have to find a deeper, what am I trusting that's really going to be there? If the worst things happen, where's the mind going to go? Like I remember once Thanissara and I, around that time, we decided to take a break and drive to the nearest town through an area that was not particularly safe and not a great area to break down in. So anyway, the road it started off sunny, this great idea, we were going to go to the movies, have a meal out, that kind of an idea. A 2-hour drive, so it's like the local town wasn't near and it was pretty arduous drive. And within a moment we set off and suddenly we were in this massive rainstorm. Mist came up, we couldn't see in front of us, and we got behind a logging truck and it was real slow. And so at a certain point the mist lifted a bit. Thanissara was driving and he looked and we looked and it looked clear and we looked at each other, and so he started, and suddenly these headlights came right in front of us. And for a second I was sure exactly we were done. And my whole body knew. It was like a moment where it all went to jelly, and Thanissara, who's very good in emergency, just turned round and screamed at me, "Pray!" And that was really great, because it's like, oh, I know where to put my mind. It's like my mind just went completely shut. It's like, woof, like, okay, just holding the mind into that. Where do we hold the mind in that moment? So this training to bring the heart into a deeper refuge, a deeper sense of this deeper trust in our own undying, deathless heart. Deeper trust into listening there. Deeper trust into these dharmas, not to dwell in hatred. That's not the training. To extend kindness. That's what we chose in the end, not a gun, but we chose to trust the Dharma and trust being kind and humane to whoever, whatever the background, whatever the situation, and take it from there. It doesn't mean we didn't have boundaries or big showdowns and many, many difficulties, very many, but it meant keeping the heart free from hate, keeping agility, free from fixed views, open, discerning. These are the qualities, these are the fruits of the Dhamma. Remembering this vow of service and compassion. Remembering that we have a big curriculum, a big learning curve that we're entering, which hopefully we can do together, to learn from those that have gone before, that have really had to cultivate a culture of resistance, transformation, positivity, honing to the beautiful, uplifting the good.